The calculus instructor nonchalantly pointed at the janitor as a joke in front of the class. But when the man quietly approached the board and solved the problem better than anyone could have imagined, it not only silenced the room, but also changed how the entire school viewed him. It was fourth period on a Thursday at Winston High in Brookfield, Ohio, a day when students hardly looked up from their phones and instead kept counting down the minutes until the final bell. Mr. Jameson, the school's calculus teacher, was known for his sharp tongue, impatient manner, and a constant stream of sarcastic remarks. While he wasn't exactly beloved, he was tolerated by most. The classroom was filled with dry equations on the whiteboard, the air tinged with the familiar scent of eraser dust and worn sneakers. Some students pretended to pay attention, while others simply stared out the window. Then, as Mr. Jameson scribbled another derivative on the board, a faint squeak sounded from the hallway. The janitor, who had been mopping quietly outside the classroom with his characteristic steady pace, was nearby. Mr. Jameson paused mid-sentence, glanced toward the door, and with a half-smile, he turned to the class. "Look who's here," he announced, gesturing toward the hallway. "Mr. Turner, care to take a crack at this problem?" He tapped the board with the back of his marker, as if issuing a challenge on a game show. A ripple of nervous laughter echoed, not boisterous, but the kind that makes you shift in your seat, uncertain if it's truly acceptable. "Come on, Marcus," Mr. Jameson goaded. "You always seem to have something on your mind." Marcus Turner, the 55-year-old janitor, stood just outside the door in his forest green uniform, faded from years of wear with a name tag sewn over his left chest. He didn't flinch or even blink. He simply regarded the room with steady, calm eyes. Then, without ceremony, he crossed the threshold and leaned casually against the wall. A few students straightened in their seats, expecting him to deliver a quick quip before departing, but instead, he walked directly to the front. "Do you mind?" he asked quietly, nodding toward the whiteboard. Mr. Jameson raised his brows in feigned invitation. "By all means, be my guest." Almost simultaneously, several phones emerged from backpacks. A soft murmur spread. One student whispered, "Is he for real?" Yet no one stopped Marcus. He picked up a marker, studied the equation for a moment, not out of hesitation, but as if he were deciphering a familiar map, and then began writing. There was no showboating, no dramatic flair, just deliberate measured strokes as he worked line after line. The room was soon wrapped in an eerie hush. The only sounds were the rhythmic scratch of the marker and the occasional creak from a chair as someone leaned forward. Mr. Jameson crossed his arms, his expression unchanged except for a tightening of his jaw, as Marcus explained each step aloud in a soft, patient tone. "See here. This is a chain rule problem. The trick is first identifying the inner function. Once you isolate that, the rest becomes far more straightforward," Marcus said calmly, his motions smooth and assured, as if he had not only solved the problem in his past, but had spent years teaching it. When he finished, he left the marker at the board and stepped back. The whiteboard now displayed a solution that was precise and well organized. He turned to face Mr. Jameson and then the class, remarking simply, "That's one way to solve it." For a long moment, the room remained silent, until a junior in the back murmured, "He got it right." Mr. Jameson opened his mouth as if to retort, but no words came out. The silence grew heavier than any joke could have been. Marcus then nodded politely and walked back toward the door, picked up his mop, and departed without a word of applause or boast. Just that quiet confidence, as if nothing extraordinary had taken place. Then, something unexpected happened. As Marcus reached for the chalk, no one moved for a full 10 seconds, as if the class were abruptly dragged from a daydream into a stark reality. That pause was soon broken by a clear statement from Tyler, a usually taciturn senior in the front row. "Wait, he just did that in his head," Tyler blurted out. His eyes were wide as he re-examined the board, as if expecting the answer to change upon a second glance. Mr. Jameson finally spoke, his tone flat and noticeably irritated. "Well, he did solve the problem correctly," he said, though his usual sarcastic inflection was conspicuously absent, replaced by an undercurrent of confusion or even discomfort. Marcus glanced back over his shoulder. "I spent years working with numbers," he said quietly, offering a small shrug. He never expected this spotlight. His manner was always measured, unassuming, as if his contribution was simply another part of his daily routine. Later that day, someone captured the entire incident on video. Ava Robinson, a junior sitting in the third row, had been recording on her phone even before the bell rang. During the next break, whispers spread through the hallways. "Did you see Mr. Turner? Look at Mr. Jameson's face. It was like someone had unplugged him." Someone else remarked, "Where did he learn that stuff? I thought he just swept floors by lunchtime." The video quickly made its way from TikTok to Instagram. Unpolished and shaky, it showed Marcus's confident hands moving deliberately across the board with a barely audible voice explaining, "Yo, he solved it." The caption read, "Our janitor just outsmarted the calculus teacher." Some laughed. Others stared in amazement. By the following day, even the teachers gathered in the lounge were abuzz. "Are you telling me he solved a full derivative chain problem entirely in his head?" asked Ms. Harper, the physics instructor, pausing mid-bite of her sandwich. Mr. Carter, the English teacher, simply remarked, "He didn't even pause, like it was pure muscle memory." Meanwhile, Mr. Jameson sat at a corner table, pretending to grade papers, his silence saying more than any retort could. For once, though, the story wasn't just about the solution. It was about what Marcus said afterward. Though he had never planned on making a scene, nor enjoyed being the center of attention, his unintentional act had shifted something at Winston High. Students began lingering by the maintenance closet just to exchange a word with him, and even teachers started giving him nods or warm smiles in the hallways. That same afternoon, Principal Stevens called Marcus into his office. Wearing his work gloves and still slightly damp from cleaning under the cafeteria sinks, Marcus removed his cap in deference as Principal Stevens leaned forward with his hands folded. "Marcus," he began, "do you have any background in education or engineering?" Marcus hesitated and then looked downward as if dusting off an old memory. "I studied mechanical engineering at Michigan Tech on a full scholarship," he admitted softly. Principal Stevens raised his eyebrows. "Seriously?" Marcus continued. "Plans got complicated. I grew up in Gary, Ohio. My mother, Beverly, raised me and my two sisters on her own while working extra shifts at a local mill. She always said, 'Books come first. The world will try to shut every door, but if you bring your own key, they can't hold you back.' I earned that key, became valedictorian, and even won the state science fair. I did my best until life took over." He recounted how a family crisis forced him to drop out, work multiple jobs, and let his dream of finishing his degree slip away. Principal Stevens listened intently as Marcus detailed the hardships, from the collapsing hopes following his mother's illness to the missed opportunity with a flooring company owned by Mr. Gabriel King, which had offered him steady work. In the years following, Marcus had drifted from job to job, eventually settling into the janitorial position at Winston High for a reliable paycheck. Students had always seen him as the quiet caretaker, the man behind the mop. No one knew of his past brilliance with numbers. But now, the video had changed everything. Teachers discovered that Marcus, known fondly now as Mr. Turner, had once tutored students with the ease of a seasoned instructor. In the following weeks, a mixture of admiration and gentle controversy spread throughout the school. Some students, inspired by his performance, began to gather outside the custodial closet just to chat with him. A 12-year-old, clutching a dog-eared geometry book, shyly asked, "Mr. Turner, do you tutor after school?" Marcus smiled and said softly, "I haven't done it in a while, but if you need help, I'd be happy to." The next day, Mr. Jameson's class was noticeably subdued. His mood had shifted. He no longer cracked jokes or picked on students at random. Instead, his gaze remained fixed on the board, his voice tinged with restraint. After class, Tyler approached him. "Mr. Jameson, that method Mr. Turner used yesterday, he explained the chain rule the same way you demonstrated last week. It was just better." Mr. Jameson only nodded once in acknowledgement, his silence laden with unspoken regret and perhaps resentment. Yet what truly astonished everyone wasn't only the solution, it was what Marcus said afterward, a quiet observation about how he once had spent a lifetime with numbers, but then life's challenges redirected him. Marcus never sought to be in the spotlight. He simply returned to his routine, refilling paper towels, fixing a leaky faucet, wiping down cafeteria tables with that same quiet dignity. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. In hallways, a few teachers began offering long looks of curiosity and respect, and even some students made a point to greet him warmly. That afternoon, Principal Stevens called Marcus back into his office. "We've received a request from the school board," he explained. "They're wondering if you might be interested in running an after-school tutoring program, small group sessions on a voluntary trial basis." Marcus looked down at his calloused, worn hands. "I haven't taught in a long time," he said quietly, "but maybe I still can." There was no pressure in Principal Stevens's tone, just a sincere invitation to share the knowledge he still possessed. "I'll think about it," Marcus replied. That evening, he retrieved a long-forgotten cardboard box from under his bed, the one containing his old Michigan Tech sweatshirt, faded transcripts, and a cherished photo of him with his mother at his college orientation. He spread everything out on his table. Though the papers had yellowed and the edges of the photo were curled, they were a reminder that knowledge endures. It waits patiently, ready to inspire anew. In the days that followed, the video continued to spread beyond Winston High. It started small. A local student page reposted it with the caption, "When your custodian outsmarts your teacher." Soon, it made its way onto a regional education forum and crossed state lines. Online reactions ranged from disbelief, "He solved it cleaner than my college professor," to admiration, "Someone get him a classroom and a chalkboard." When Marcus arrived at work the next morning, he was greeted by a change in the atmosphere. Colleagues and students alike offered friendly smiles and nods. "Good morning, Mr. Turner," a student called out as he passed the library. "You're kind of famous now." Marcus merely chuckled. "Don't believe everything you read," he replied humbly. Later that day, Tyler, along with two other students, one of whom held an open calculus textbook with a problem highlighted in bright pink, asked Marcus if he could help them work through the problem. Marcus scanned the empty hallway in mild surprise. "You've got a free period?" he inquired gently. "We made time," Tyler assured him. Before long, in the middle of a corridor lined with lockers and colorful science fair posters, Marcus sat on the floor with a small group of teenagers and led them through a multivariable equation, step by step. Instead of lecturing from the front of a classroom, he sat among them, engaging in a dialogue that was as much about building confidence as it was about mathematics. One freshman, Isaiah, who had once nearly failed algebra, began solving quadratic equations without hesitation. Tasha, a student who once despised math, later found herself leading weekend study sessions with her cousins, using Marcus's handwritten notes as a guide. Though he never sought titles or accolades, the growing respect from students and even some teachers was unmistakable. In the teacher's lounge, Ms. Harper remarked to a colleague, "I think Mr. Turner has a gift, and not just with numbers." Meanwhile, Mr. Jameson continued to keep his distance, his bitterness thinly veiled behind clipped words and shifty glances. At a parent-teacher meeting, when the discussion turned to Marcus's surprising influence, Mr. Jameson muttered, "It's good they're interested in math, as long as we don't blur the line between instruction and inspiration." His tone, though polite, carried an unmistakable edge that everyone sensed. A few weeks later, Principal Stevens invited Mr. Jameson into his office. "I know it must sting," Stevens said, "but Marcus didn't embarrass you. He inspired the students." Mr. Jameson shifted uncomfortably, his pride wounded, yet slowly softening. Deep down, he knew that despite his reluctance, Marcus was reaching the students in ways few of them ever had. Marcus, for his part, remained true to himself. He continued with his daily routine, now carrying a small binder filled with problems, blank worksheets, and notes he'd written during breaks. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, a small group would gather in the library, informally calling their time Turner Talks. There, amidst scribbled notes and earnest questions, students rediscovered their faith in learning. At the annual student showcase that spring, Winston High set up a booth titled Turner's Table, where dozens of students showcased reflections on math, life, and confidence. The overwhelming sentiment was clear. No longer was he merely the janitor. For many, he had become a mentor, an inspiration, a quiet force who had helped them discover the answers inside themselves. Later that evening, back in his modest apartment, Marcus pulled out that old Michigan Tech sweatshirt from its box. Instead of donning it, he carefully folded it, placed it in a new storage bin alongside a folder of handwritten thank you notes from students, and paused to reflect on his legacy. He realized that true legacy isn't measured by titles or degrees. It's measured by the difference you make in others' lives. Thank you for listening to Marcus Turner's story, a story of unexpected brilliance, resilience, and the power of nurturing hidden talents. If it moved you, if it reminded you of someone who believed in you even when you were overlooked, share it with those who need to hear it. Because sometimes the greatest minds are discovered in the quietest corners.